Welcome back. So there's no measure, no telling how important education is, but in administering it, inevitably there'll be challenges. So let's talk about some of the challenges that have come as a result of the release of the 2025 Wassce result by the exam body, the West African Examination Council. So it felt like deja vu, really, when WAEC explained that its portal experienced technical glitch as a result of some of the review that it conducted on some papers, some subjects. And so many were asking, we hope this is not another jam situation, but there may be, other layers to this particular challenge as well. And so joining us to have this conversation is the chairman, Nigeria Union of Teachers, Lagos Wing, Comrade Akitoye Hassan. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, my sister. Good morning, viewers.
So how concerning is it for you that WAEC is also having this particular challenge of the release amid the release of the 2025 Wassce results?
It is a serious challenge that calls for concern. However, we must also realize that we find ourselves in a situation whereby we are just evolving in all sectors, not only in education. So WAEC as a body cannot be left out of this situation. So let's assume that something of such nature comes up sometimes. But the fact is that sincerity to accept the fault, take up the challenge, and rise up to the occasion, ensuring that there is transparency in handling the situation to the benefit of the parties concerned. And I think WAEC now coming out to accept the responsibility that they had a glitch within their system is a welcome development, because if they fail to, the effect is that thousands, not even thousands, it runs to millions of students whose life might have been affected with this glitch. So it's a welcome development that they have accepted, and they have called for review, and the review is ongoing. We hope that review, they will go about it transparently in ensuring that the needful is done.
So when you say that they have accepted responsibility, I wonder if you're also clarifying that prior to this time, when it spoke about perhaps the reason for the mass failure was as a result of its effort to check exam malpractice. I know that you had spoken to that when you said that it's not okay for the exam body to be placing the responsibility of exam malpractice at the doorstep of principals and the schools. Is that what you're saying, that WAEC is now accepting responsibility?
Partially. When they put forward that excuse of attempt to curb examination malpractices, I don't see WAEC being sincere absolutely in that respect. Because if they are sincere, it is a common knowledge that out there are sites that some of these younger students access questions, even solutions attached. How did those questions get into those sites? So, and let's leave that. After the release of the exam, they come up with allegation. And instead of them, in the course of marking the script, they discover students who have engaged in malpractices. I don't know how sincere they can go about that. That it is in the course of marking the script that you will now determine, or rather discover malpractices. You rather discover malpractice on the site, either by the invigilator or the WAEC supervisor moving around. As long as you pass that process, you pass that stage, it is very hard for you. So sometimes they come round.
Sorry,
maybe I should.
So you can repeat yourself so that we don't miss. Are you saying that there's a possibility that part of how they check malpractice is after the exams have been written?
That is according to WAEC.
Oh, how did they do?
Because some of our principals in the recent time, in the last, say, 4 or 5 years, after the release of the exam, WAEC will come up with indictment list that they find out in the course of marking the script that students copied one another in your school. And that principal will now be made to pay certain amount of money as fines for offense committed by students, which they discovered in the course of marking. I think that sounds unreasonable. Whereas there were invigilators during the course of that examination. WAEC monitors move around. As long as at that particular stage you could not dictate any act of malpractice, that is gone. Now, relating that back to the earlier assertion I made, that there are sites that the so-called questions, some of these younger ones access them. WAEC is aware of this. So if you could not curb malpractices at that end, whereby your question got leaked, because the issue of this latest exam, whereby students wrote exam late in the night, was as a result of the fact that WAEC admitted that their question has leaked. So do you now see the correlation? So if students can access question via some, fraudulent sites, WAEC is culpable. And if at the end of the day, those students now wrote something similar, I think it's reasonable, because once you have the question, you research, and probably these students, they were taught by the same teacher, they go into their notebook, those who could cram, before the day, and they had their way. And now for WAEC to come round, instead of now indicting the student, fall back on the principal, and now make the principal to pay fine. And that is where I'm having issues with them.
Well, WAEC, I think on Monday, disowned that list that contained, I think, 151 secondary schools that, according to that statement, were blacklisted. WAEC said that did not emanate from them. I don't know if you've also gotten that response from WAEC, saying that they didn't release that particular one.
I have not gotten that report, but
okay.
This I have said is what is happening.
Okay, so let's talk about, because there are different angles to this elephant, right? There's a malpractice bit. There is the conduct of the examination, and we're just showing that period where students were writing examinations at night.
Yes.
I mean, look at them. These people were meant to be writing examinations in the afternoon, morning, afternoon, but at night, they were writing examinations. You wonder what kind of results they will get from that examination. So there is the conduct, there is the technical aspect, which is now what we're dealing with now on the website and all of that. But there's also the performance bit.
Yes.
And I want us to speak to performance, because that is one that concerns you personally.
Yes.
First off, seeing the results this year, that only 38% scored credit in at least 5 subjects and above, including English and maths, compared to last year where we had 72%. Does that make you sad as a teacher?
Definitely. I will be sad as a teacher that there is decline in the performance, because it is a reflection of our effort. That means we'll say that probably the teacher has not really done their work the way it ought to be. But it goes beyond teachers alone, the performances of students. But you see, this issue we are discussing has to do with data. Where you have data, it depends on the inference you want to draw from your data. That will determine the kind of analysis you will subject your data into. I will dwell into it now, this 2025. The overall performance, excluding English and Maths, if you say, hey, student who enrolled for Wassce this year, what has been their general performance? Irrespective of whether English or Maths, you have 87.24, according to Wassce. Is that a poor performance? So, my members cut across so many subject areas. Do you now want to use 2 subjects to determine the overall performance of my members? This is a very good result. But sometimes the way we analyze data, we draw certain wrong inference. 87.24 is a good performance generally, because students wrote agri science, they wrote biology, they wrote chemistry, literature in English.
Are you saying that the mass failure being reported was predominant in 2 important subjects?
That is the interpretation.
As a result, cannot be generalized.
That is the interpretation. Go to Wassce database, 87.24, irrespective of whether English or mathematics, had 5 credits. But when you now narrow it down to excluding mathematics and English, then you have that at 8.
So let's prove further. So
including
what is
maths
it?
and English.
Yes.
Including maths and English, so you now have that at 8.
So let's prove further. What is the problem with, let's talk about this maths and English.
Yes.
Is it time for us to review this issue of mandatory maths and English passage? Or is the quality of teachers? Or AI is distorting our scholarship? What exactly? So I want you to speak exclusively to the maths and English bits of the data, because if it's mandatory, it's mandatory.
Yeah.
And it becomes a yardstick for you to advance. If you like, have 9 credits in any other subject. If you don't have in these 2, you're going to have a problem getting further in your education. So that is an important conversation we should have. Where should we take that conversation to? Should we scale down? Should we optimize? Should we question teaching abilities? What exactly should we look at? Talking about maths and English.
It is very simple. It is as if we are confused. There is difference between being an expert in a particular subject, especially when it comes to these 2 subjects. The simpler way I can put it is one must be literate, then at the other side, numeracy. I don't know, beyond being numerate, a lawyer or mass communicator want to do with mathematics. How do you apply algebra here or geometry? Like I used to say, when you are talking about this subject, for instance, mathematics, you must have basic understanding of arithmetic to a certain level. That making students to pass through this, especially mathematics as a subject, is not about that algebra or geometry. It's about preparing the student for challenges ahead in life. I used to say it. It's about preparing them for critical thinking. That mathematics, you solve this, you solve that. That this life is about challenges. We are just preparing them, using that subject to prepare them for society challenges. But we have been getting the communication wrong right from the inception. Like I said, if you now make mathematics compulsory for a law student,
or somebody who intends to study
who intend to study law, who should be versed in literature
and in English,
and in English, and he already passed that, and you now want to use the percentage of failures in that respect to determine the overall performance, we are sending wrong signals out. Let me ask you a question. Those subjects they pass, did they use German language to write them?
And I think you're making that point again, because if you're able to pass agriculture...
Agricultural science, do you use French to write that agriculture that you pass?
Comrade, it's written in English, so it's assumed that if you're able to pass agriculture, you should pass English. Exactly. Because without the knowledge of English, you wouldn't understand the questions in agriculture. That's one. Now, mathematics, and I think it's...
No, I don't agree perfectly with that.
No, that's the point you're making, but that's what it is. The question is written in English, am I correct? So
yes.
If you don't have understanding of
basic
English,
understanding.
Exactly.
But when you go into nitty-gritty of English language as a subject, we are here communicating. You actually got my content. That does not mean that if an expert analyzes the way I choose my words, that it will not defeat that I'm not an expert in English. So, because I teach English. I want but the fact is I've been able to communicate.
I appreciate the point you're making,
yes.
But I want us to step back, because credits, C6 is 50 to 54, I believe.
How they determine it?
I'm saying yes.
Sometimes they know how they go, but that is,
that's
we
like
assume that average, 50 are above.
50 to 54,
yes.
That's a C6.
Yes.
So it's assumed that you should be able to at least perform averagely to get a credit, a C6. Now, English, obviously, all the questions are written in English, so you should have an average, nobody's saying be excellent, you should be excellent, but have an average understanding of English. That's one. Mathematics is not just calculations, it's about critical reasoning, problem-solving ability. So whether you're going to study law or agriculture, you need to be able to think critically, to be able to solve problems. As a lawyer, in fact, your job primarily is solving problems. And critical thinking, you are presented with a case, and you begin to think, what makes this case what it is? So it's beyond, oh, you want to be an engineer, that you need to be good in mathematics. It's primarily about critical thinking, about problem-solving skills. And it goes back to our teaching methods. Because I think that a lot of students have that potential, but the way they are taught is usually the challenge. Imagine teaching students about computer and you are sketching the computer to show them that this is a mouse, when you should actually have a computer for them to interact with. Or chemistry, all they're doing is solving chemical equations, but they've never seen these chemicals. They don't know what it looks like, so learning is abstract to them. So don't you think that's a challenge we should be speaking to?
And you are now addressing some of the challenges that teachers are facing. That even what you know that you want to teach, the system is not helping you to deliver adequately. And this is what are lacking in our society. We tend to learn more of theories than practical. You talk less if you say that, okay, put this inside water and you notice effervescence. If you drop it without talking, that particular substance inside water and the students see effervescence, you just say, do you see what you are seeing is effervescence? Then there is no need for you describing what effervescence is to them or drawing it for them.
Goodness me.
These are some of the challenges. So at this point, we should even praise Nigerian teachers who are teaching, still make these students to pass up to this level, devoid of simulations.
Because they do not have what to work with.
Because they do not have what it takes. You have witnessed the last English they wrote that runs into night. If we are prepared and made our schools conducive earlier, before we had that program, would that have arisen?
So since we're
most schools, they don't have light. So we now find ourselves in a situation where light matters, and it became a problem.
So since we've talked about method of teaching, let's also talk about means of language deployed to teaching, because it's material to the conversation about the success or lack of success in mathematics and English. Comrade, has the ship sailed on the language deployed to teaching these very critical subjects and other subjects by extension? Because Kade talked about having basic knowledge of English language to be able to pass agriculture. But we have seen time and again that in other climes where the indigenous language, the mother tongue, is deployed to teaching, that there are higher success rates, particularly in the all-important subject of mathematics, which is required for critical thinking. But it's been many years down the line since the adoption of English language as our means of communication. So has the ship sailed on exploring the possibilities of changing the medium of teaching?
That is the reason why initially I said I did not agree absolutely with Cowdy when he said that at least you ought to have this credit as a matter of maybe it is not all that high to score 50. The point I'm trying to drive tend towards the issue she has raised, that this is just a language. Once you could speak it to communicate at the basic level, and that level made it possible for those students to pass other subjects. That's why I said, after all, it was this same English language they used to write other subjects. This borders on our value that it is high time we pay less premium on this subject as a determinant of success. Rather at the level that, hey, you are already literate, you can communicate effectively. Beyond that, if your intending area of specialization now has to do, for instance, as a lawyer, as a communicator, and you don't pass English, I think it doesn't make sense. As an engineer, to be, and you don't pass mathematics, where is the way? So that is where we are driving at. If we cannot migrate to that level, that the Japanese, the Chinese are already find themselves, and they are making progress, that when you teach with indigenous language, it enhances, you know, understanding better.
But you still have to know your maths.
Hey, sodium chloride. Tell them this is EO. If you put sodium chloride inside water, it dissolves, and you want to, you know, retrieve it back. If you subject it to heat, the water dries up and it left. You can't explain this in the modern language, and it will enhance his understanding. But we can't get there yet. And you know, teachers are not also being challenged. We are not being challenged because of the value we place on them in the society. They overstress them. Look at it. For instance, you said teaching students what ordinarily you need to demonstrate in 5 minutes, and they understand.
But is there a platform for the engagement of these issues among stakeholders at the ministry level, state ministry level, perhaps federal ministry level, and with the examination bodies as well, such that these issues can be highlighted?
That are going on regular basis. In Lagos, we organized an annual lecture. The one we had about 2 or 3 days ago, where I addressed this issue of refertilizing basic education. We create platform for discussion, but it is one thing to discuss. It is another thing for those who should take up steps to address some of these issues. Is this teacher that are going to provide all these amenities in our schools? Education should be a priority.
Okay.
After that, health. It is when you are healthy that you can do some other thing. But in this part of the world, ignorance is an instrument for the African leaders to perpetrate themselves in power, because an ignorant mind will not ask questions.
So if you were to adopt a language, because we're multilingual, not like the Chinese or the Indians or even the Ghanaians who speak, there's this common language among those people. For Nigeria, that we have how many languages, how many ethnic nationalities, I don't know. You can't adopt Yoruba, you can't adopt Igbo, you can't adopt Hausa. What about the ethnic minorities? Is it Pidgin we should not adopt as a means to communicate so that we can effectively, what exactly would you propose? Because we have to be practical.
That is part of our challenge. It is one thing for you to take decision on your direction first. After that, that will lead you to analysis of impediments. And through that, you navigate to a middle point. For instance, even in the north, that we believe that, oh, probably they are monocultural entity. It is not. But starting from Kogi, Kwara, up north, hardly you could find any person who could not speak Hausa language. And we have Kanuri there. We have Gwari. We have Fulanis. If you come down south, even within Yoruba ethnic group, we have multi-dialects. But we can navigate. That should not be an impediment for us to navigate through.
I was waiting for you to come to Niger Delta.
So that the word for this conversation. We must anchor at this point. Thank you so much, sir, for coming through. We've been talking with the NUT chairman, Lagos Wing, Comrade Akitoye Hassan. Thank you, sir, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, man.